You are failing because you talk too much. You announce your goals, you post your progress, and you leak your power before the work is even done. The world doesn't need to hear your plans. It needs to be crushed by your results. When you rebuild in the dark, you eliminate the interference of critics and the poison of premature praise. True transformation happens in the shadow, where the ego dies and the master is born. Shut your mouth. Lock the door. Rebuild in silence. Chapter 1. Stop seeking witnesses. Shut your mouth and listen. You are currently leaking your potential. Every time you feel the urge to tell someone about your new diet, your new business plan, or your new morning routine, you are performing a slow-motion suicide of your own ambition. You think you're sharing your journey. You think you're building accountability. You are wrong. You're seeking a witness because you are too weak to be your own judge. You are looking for a round of applause for a race you haven't even started. If you need someone else to see your progress for it to be real, then it isn't real. It is a performance. You aren't rebuilding your life. You are just staging a play. You are addicted to the warm feeling of a stranger's validation. You want the credit without the calluses. You want the good job before you've done the work. This is a profound failure of character. It is the hallmark of the amateur. You don't need their permission to change. You have a choice. You could be the person who is seen and stagnant, or the person who is hidden and growing. That's the key. True transformation is a cold, lonely process. It happens in the early hours of the morning when no one is watching. It happens in the boring repetitions that nobody wants to see. When you look for a witness, you are inviting the world into your private laboratory. You are letting their opinions, their doubts, and their premature praise contaminate your results. It's not about your need for support. It's about your discipline to be self-sourced. You don't need a like to make your workout effective. You don't need a comment to make your bank account grow. You don't need their permission to change. Think about the person at the gym. We all know them. They walk in, and the first thing they do is find the best lighting. They spend 10 minutes setting up a tripod. They record 3 reps of a mediocre set, spend 15 minutes editing the clip, and another 20 minutes checking their notifications. By the end of the hour, they have spent more time looking at their screen than they have moving the iron. What is the physiological result? 0. Their muscles don't care about the filter. Their heart rate didn't stay high enough to burn fat. They left the gym with a hit of dopamine from their followers, but their body is exactly the same as it was yesterday. They are a performer, not an athlete. They are so focused on the witness that they have forgotten the work. While they are busy filming their journey, the silent operator in the corner has finished 5 sets of heavy squats and left without saying a word. One person has the footage, the other person has the results. You don't need their permission to change. When you announce your goals to the world, your brain makes a catastrophic mistake. It receives the social validation and releases the same reward chemicals as if you had actually achieved the goal. You get a victory high just for talking about it. Because you already feel like a winner, your biological drive to do the actual painful work evaporates. You have tricked yourself into satisfaction. You have traded your future victory for a temporary thumbs up. A cold mind understands that silence is a pressure cooker. When you keep your mouth shut, the energy of your ambition has nowhere to go. It builds up inside you. It creates a tension that can only be released through action. By refusing to seek a witness, you're forcing yourself to execute. You're making the work the only way to feel good. You don't need their permission to change. Here is your behavioral instruction, the blackout period. For the next 30 days, you are to keep every single win a secret. If you lose 5 pounds, tell no one. If you save your first $1,000, tell no one. If you master a new skill, tell no one. You are to move through the world as if nothing has changed. You are to operate in the shadow. If people ask what you've been up to, give them a vague, boring answer. Just working, or nothing much. Let them think you are exactly the same person you were a month ago. In reality, you are rebuilding the foundation of your life. You are training your brain to find satisfaction in the reality of progress rather than the perception of it. You are becoming your own audience. You don't need their permission to change. You have a choice. You can have the heat of social attention or the cold power of secret growth. That's the key. Attention is a distraction. It makes you self-conscious. It makes you wonder what they'll think if you fail. When you work in total anonymity, you are free. You are free to fail, free to pivot, and free to be ruthless with yourself because there is no one to impress. It's not about being a loner. It's about your discipline to protect the process. You don't need their permission to go ghost. You don't need their permission to disappear from the social scene to build your empire. The world will be there when you are done. But right now, the world is a parasite. It wants to feed on your energy and give you nothing in return. You don't need their permission to change. Stop being a content creator for your own life and start being a reality creator. The person who is truly changing doesn't have time to document it. They're too busy doing the work. They are too busy struggling. They are too busy winning. If you find yourself reaching for your phone to share a victory, stop. Put the phone back in your pocket. Feel that uncomfortable urge to be seen and let it burn. That burn is your ego dying. Let it die. Beneath the ego is the master. And the master knows that the most powerful thing you can do is show up 6 months from now as a completely different human being with zero explanation. You don't need their permission to change. You don't need their permission to be better than you were yesterday. You don't need their permission to leave your old friends behind if they aren't on the same mission. You don't need their permission to value your silence over their input. You don't need their permission to change. Repeat this until is your law. My progress is private. My results are public. My discipline is silent. You have begun the quiet rebuilding. You have realized that the witness is a trap and the applause is a lie. You are training yourself to find the cold satisfaction of the secret grind. You are becoming undeniable. You don't need their permission to change. You master the urge to speak. You have closed the door to the world. You are finally working for the only person who matters, the person you are becoming. But as you retreat into the silence, you will realize that the world's praise was more than just a distraction. It was a drug. And like any drug, the withdrawal is going to be painful. You mastered the witness. Now let's talk about the biological trap of the good job. Chapter 2, the high cost of social validation. Validation is a debt you cannot afford to pay. Most of you are walking around with empty pockets and a hollow spirit because you have spent your entire life trading your potential for a pat on the back. You are addicted to the cheap high of being told you're doing a good job. You are a dopamine junkie. You think that when people cheer for you, it means you're winning. You're wrong. Most of the time, the cheering is what stops you from crossing the finish line. When you receive praise for something you haven't finished yet, you are poisoning your own ambition. Your brain is a biological machine. It doesn't know the difference between the high of actually succeeding and the high of someone telling you that you might succeed. When the applause starts early, the drive ends. Why would your biology endure the pain of the grind when it already received the reward of the results? Premature praise is a trap. You have a choice. You can have the sugar rush of a compliment today or the ironclad reality of a victory tomorrow. That's the key. Compliments are soft. They make you relax. They make you think you've arrived when you haven't even left the station. The person who is rebuilding in silence knows that praise is a distraction. They know that every good for you they receive is a potential leak in their pressure cooker. It's not about your need for encouragement. It's about your discipline to stay hungry. Encouragement is for children. Results are for adults. You don't need their permission to be dissatisfied with yourself until the work is done. You don't need their permission to ignore the likes while you're in the trenches. Premature praise is a trap. Think about the LinkedIn entrepreneur. We see it every day. He has an idea. He has a meeting. He takes a selfie in a coffee shop with a laptop and a vague caption about big things coming. He announces a partnership with a major player before the ink is dry on the contract. What happens next? His network goes wild. Congratulations. Keep crushing it. So proud of you. His brain is flooded with dopamine. He feels like a titan of industry. He spends the next 3 days responding to comments and basking in the warmth of social validation. But while he was busy being an entrepreneur on the internet, the actual work slowed down. The details were missed. The follow-up email was late. The partner realized the entrepreneur was more interested in the status of the deal than the substance of the business. The deal falls through. The partnership dies. He is left with a pile of digital congratulations and a bank account that is still zero. He fell for the trap. He took the reward before he did the work. Premature praise is a trap. External validation is a drug that makes you soft. It creates a false summit. You look up, you see a bit of sun, and everyone tells you you've reached the top. So you sit down, you take off your boots, you start to celebrate. But you aren't at the top. You're just on a plateau, and the real mountain is still ahead of you, hidden by the fog of other people's opinions. A cold mind treats praise like a threat. When someone tells you you're doing great, your response should be internal, not yet. You must develop a biological immunity to the good job. If you let their praise get to your head, you will let their criticism get to your heart. Both are external noises that have nothing to do with the mission. Premature praise is a trap. Here is your behavioral instruction, the validation fast. For the next 30 days, you are forbidden from talking about your intentions. If you're starting a business, do not post about it. If you're learning a language, do not show off. If you're hit with a brilliant idea, write it in a private journal and lock it. You must learn to operate in a vacuum. You must train your brain to only release dopamine when the task is complete. Not when it's started, not when it's in progress. Only when the result is an unarguable fact. You are resetting your internal reward system. You are moving from external validation to internal execution. Premature praise is a trap. You have a choice. You can be validated and mediocre or unseen and elite. That's the key. The elite do not look for a good job from people who aren't even in the arena. They find their satisfaction in the precision of the strike. They find their peace in the integrity of the routine. It's not about being humble. It's about your discipline to protect your hunger. Hunger is your greatest asset. It is the fire that drives the machine. Praise is the fire extinguisher. Every time you let someone tell you how impressive you are letting them spray foam on your internal flame. Stop being so eager to be impressed with yourself through the eyes of others. Premature praise is a trap. The world wants to celebrate you early because it's a way to neutralize you. If the crowd can make you feel like a winner before you've actually won, they've successfully stopped a competitor. They've made you one of them. They've made you comfortable. Reject the comfort. Stay in the cold. When someone offers you premature praise, recognize it for what it is, a bribe to stop working. They are offering you a participation trophy for your own life. Throw in the trash. The only trophy that matters is the one you earn when the scoreboard says the game is over. Premature praise is a trap. You don't need their permission to be unimpressed by your own progress. You don't need their permission to stay in the dark until you have something worth seeing. Let them wonder why you're so quiet. Let them think you've given up. Their confusion is a sign that you are finally on the right track. Premature praise is a trap. Repeat this until it is your internal law. Praise is poison. Results are the cure. I do not eat until the hunt is over. You have learned to fear the good job. You have realized that the applause of the crowd is a chain that keeps you small. You are training yourself to find the cold satisfaction of the private win. You are becoming a ghost in the machine of social signaling. Premature praise is a trap. You mastered the validation. You have stopped the dopamine leaks. You're finally working for the result, not the reaction. You have cleared the fog of other people's opinions. But as you withdraw from the social spotlight, you will find that the world doesn't just go quiet. It gets suspicious. It tries to pull you back. It demands to know where you went. You mastered the ego. Now let's talk about the strategic power of disappearing. Chapter 3, The Fortress of Anonymity. The world is obsessed with being seen. Everyone wants a platform. Everyone wants a personal brand. They think that by being visible, they're being powerful. They are wrong. Visibility is a vulnerability. When the world is watching you, you are no longer free to fail. You're no longer free to be ugly, to be messy, or to be wrong. You are performing for an audience. And an audience is a weight that will eventually crush your creativity and your courage. True power is found in the shadows. True power is found in the fortress of anonymity. When no one knows what you are doing, no one can tell you that you're doing it wrong. When no one knows your name, no one can use it against you. Anonymity is not a sign of weakness. It is your greatest strategic advantage. It is the laboratory where you can explode, rebuild, and pivot without the world recording your every stumble. Work in the dark to own the light. You have a choice. You can be the rising star who burns out under the pressure of public expectation, or you can be the silent operator who builds an empire in total peace. That's the key. Expectation is a cage. When people expect you to be a certain way, you subconsciously adjust your behavior to fit their mold. You stop taking risks. You stop experimenting. You start playing it safe because you're afraid of the "I told you so." It's not about being a hermit. It's about your discipline to protect your experimental phase. You don't need their permission to be a nobody while you're becoming a somebody. You don't need their permission to vanish from the radar so you can fly higher. Work in the dark to own the light. Think about the high-level athlete, the one who has tasted victory but knows they are currently plateauing. What do? They don't spend their off-season posting highlight reels on social media. They don't do the talk show circuit. They leave. They move to a different country. They find a remote training camp where no one speaks their language and no one knows their stats. They live in a Spartan room. They eat basic food. They train in total isolation. In that fortress of anonymity, they are allowed to be weak. They are allowed to change their technique, to fall down, and to look like an amateur again. Because there are no cameras and no fans, there is no ego. There's only the work. When they finally emerge for the championship season, the world is shocked by their transformation. They call it magic. It wasn't magic. It was the discipline of the dark. They owned the light because they were willing to disappear into the shadow. Work in the dark to own the light. Most of you are terrified of being forgotten. You think that if you stop posting, stop networking, and stop staying relevant, you will disappear. Good. Let yourself disappear. If your relevance is so fragile that 30 days of silence kills it, then you weren't relevant. You were just a loud distraction. The fortress of anonymity allows you to develop iron certainty. When you build something in the dark, you are building it for yourself. You aren't building it for the clout. You aren't building it to prove a point to your ex or your high school rivals. You are building it because it is your mission. When the foundation is laid in the dark, it is solid. It doesn't need the sun to hold it up. Work in the dark to own the light. Here is your behavioral instruction, the Ghost Protocol. For the next 60 days, I want you to become a mystery. If you're starting a new project, do not announce it. If you're changing your physical appearance, do not post before photos. If you're moving to a new city or a new job, keep the details on a need-to-know basis. You are creating a strategic void. When people don't know what you're up to, they start to project their own fears and fascinations onto you. Let them. Their curiosity is energy that you're not wasting on explanations. You're using that energy to fuel the work. You are training yourself to find comfort in being unseen. You are building the fortress. Work in the dark to own the light. You have a choice. You can have the warm feeling of being recognized or the cold power of being underestimated. That's the key. Being underestimated is a gift. It gives you the element of surprise. When people think you are doing nothing, they stop competing with you. They stop trying to sabotage you. They leave you alone. It's not about secrecy. It's about your discipline to stay focused on the output. You don't need their permission to be a ghost. You don't need their permission to be the person who just disappeared. The world is loud and crowded. The fortress is quiet and spacious. Work in the dark to own the light. Anonymity is the ultimate shield against the social heat we talked about earlier. Critics cannot attack a target they cannot see. Competitors cannot copy a move they don't know is being made. By working in the dark, you are protecting the infant version of your new life. You're giving it time to grow strong enough to survive the light. Stop being so eager to show the world your rough drafts. Stop inviting the public into your construction site. Wait until the building is finished. Wait until the results are undeniable. The world will find out soon enough. And when they do, they won't find a striking new you. They will find an unmovable mountain. Work in the dark to own the light. You don't need their permission to value your privacy over their curiosity. You don't need their permission to be the quiet one in the room who knows more than they say. Work in the dark to own the light. Repeat this until it is your law. My silence is my sanctuary. My anonymity is my advantage. My work is my witness. You have built the fortress. You have realized that the shadow is not a place of hiding, but a place of forging. You are training yourself to be self-sourced. You are becoming a ghost to the world, so you can become a giant in reality. Work in the dark to own the light. You master the anonymity. You have found the freedom of the shadow. You're working with a level of purity that you haven't felt in years. But as you rebuild the what and the how, you will eventually have to confront the who. The fortress protects the work, but eventually the old version of you, the one the world still remembers, must be dealt with. You master the shadow. Now, let's talk about the final act of internal violence required for your rebirth. Chapter 4. Kill the version of you they know. The greatest obstacle to your future is your past. Specifically, the version of you that currently lives in the minds of other people. You're being held hostage by a ghost. Your friends, your family, and your coworkers have a file on you. They think they know what you're capable of. They think they know your limits. They think they know your brand. And because they are comfortable with who you were, they will fight tooth and nail to keep you from becoming who you are. Rebuilding yourself in silence requires an act of internal execution. You must be willing to murder your old social identity. You must be willing to let the you that they are comfortable with wither away and die without offering a single word of explanation. Most people fail because they try to negotiate their transformation. They try to get their old circle to understand their new direction. They want a permit to change. Let the old you die in silence. You have a choice. You can stay small to keep your friends comfortable, or you can grow large and let them deal with the shadow. That's the key. People don't want you to change because your growth highlights their stagnation. When you start waking up at 4 a.m., you remind them that they are sleeping in. When you stop drinking, you remind them that they have a problem. Your evolution is an indictment of their laziness. It's not about being mean, it's about your discipline to outgrow your environment. You don't need their permission to stop being who you used to be. You don't need their permission to change the locks on your mental doors. Let the old you die in silence. Think about the party animal. We've all seen this person. They're the life of every Friday night. They're the one everyone calls when they want to forget their problems. Their entire social identity is built on being fun, available, and unfiltered. But then, one day, they realize they are drifting. They decide to build a business. They decide to master craft. The texts start coming on Friday night. Where are you? Don't be boring. Just one drink. The herd is panicking. They feel the loss of their entertainer. The old version of this person would have replied with an apology. They would have tried to explain their new goals. They would have begged for understanding. But the operator, the one who understands the power of quiet rebuilding, does something different. They don't reply. They don't explain. They don't defend their decision to stay home and work. They just let the phone buzz on the desk while they focus on the mission. They allow themselves to be called boring. They allow themselves to be called arrogant. They let the old, available, weak version of themselves die in the minds of the herd. While the herd is shouting at a ghost, the operator is building a reality. Let the old you die in silence. You're leaking power every time you try to justify your new habits. I'm doing this new thing, or I'm trying to be more productive. Stop it. When you explain, you are asking for validation. You're giving them a chance to talk you out of it. You are giving them a vote in a country where you're the sole dictator. A cold mind knows that the only way to kill an old identity is to starve it of attention. If you stop feeding the old version of yourself, it will eventually vanish. You don't need to hold a funeral. You don't need to make an announcement. You just need to stop showing up as the person they expect. Let the old you die in silence. Here is your behavioral instruction, the identity severance. For the next 30 days, you are to stop all status updates on your personality. If you used to be the opinionated one, stay silent in the next meeting. If you used to be the available one, let the calls go to voicemail. If you used to be the complainer, stop sharing your grievances. You are creating a vacuum. You are letting people's assumptions about you fall into a black hole. When they realize they can no longer predict your behavior, they will try to provoke you. They will try to bait the old you back to the surface. They will bring up old jokes or old failures. Watch them. Do not react. Do not explain. Just observe the ghost of who you were as it fades away. You are training the world to realize that the person they used to know is gone. You are making room for the master to take the seat. Let the old you die in silence. You have a choice. You can have the warm feeling of being understood by people who are going nowhere, or the cold reality of being a stranger to everyone except your future self. That's the key. Rebuilding is an act of treason against your old life. You have to be okay with being the villain in their story if it means being the hero in yours. It's not about bad blood. It's about your discipline to protect the new frequency. You don't need their permission to be different. You don't need their permission to stop liking the things you used to like. The person you were 10 years ago was a different biological and mental entity. Stop trying to keep him on life support. Let the old you die in silence. The people who truly belong in your future won't need an explanation for your growth. They will see the results and they will respect the work. The people who demand an explanation are the ones who want to use your old weaknesses against you. They want the old you back because the old you was easier to manage. Don't be manageable. Be unmovable. When you stop explaining your transformation, you gain a terrifying level of power. You become an enigma. You become a person who moves with a level of internal authority that doesn't require an external witness. Let the old you die in silence. You don't need their permission to outgrow the room. You don't need their permission to be the one who changed. If they want to mourn the person you used to be, let them. You have work to do. You have an empire to build. And you cannot build a new world on the ruins of an old identity that you're still trying to save. Let the old you die in silence. Repeat this until it is your internal law. I am not who they think I am. I'm not who I used to be. I am what I am currently building. You have committed the act. You have killed the ghost. You're no longer a slave to their expectations. You have cleared the ground, murdered the past, and stood up in the silence of your own potential. You are becoming a stranger to the mediocre and a threat to the status quo. Let the old you die in silence. You mastered the identity. You have shed the skin of the person you used to be. You are moving with a level of freedom that only comes when you stop caring if you're understood. You have cleared the space. But now that the old words are gone, you must find a new way to speak to the world. You must find a language that doesn't use a single vowel. You master the past. Now, let's talk about the only form of communication that the world actually fears. Chapter 5. Results are the only argument. Stop trying to win the debate. Stop drafting the perfect response to your critics. Stop explaining why your path is valid or why your vision is sound. Every word you utter in defense of your potential is a waste of oxygen. When you argue, you are playing on their turf. You are submitting your life to their jury. You are asking for a verdict. In the world of the high performer, there is no jury. There is only the scoreboard. Words are cheap. They are the currency of the amateur. Anyone can talk. Anyone can announce. But a result? A finished, polished, undeniable result is a physical fact. It is a boulder dropped into a pond. It doesn't matter if the pond likes the boulder. The pond has been changed. When you stop talking and start delivering, You move from the realm of opinion to the realm of reality. Execution is the only language they respect. You have a choice. You could be the person who is right but stagnant, or the person who is silent and successful. That's the key. Most people spend their lives in a state of verbal friction. They want to be understood. They want their effort to be acknowledged. They want the world to agree that they are talented. It's not about your unrecognized talent. It's about your discipline to let the work speak for you. You don't need their permission to be a master. You don't need their permission to win. When you deliver a result that is 10 times better than the competition, the argument is over. You haven't won the debate, you've deleted it. Execution is the only language they respect. Think about the quiet professional in the boardroom. The room is loud. People are posturing. They're using buzzwords to hide their lack of progress. They're making excuses for why the projections were missed. They're arguing about market conditions and unforeseen variables. It is a storm of hot air. Then the operator speaks. They don't give a speech. They don't tell a story. They simply open a laptop and show the data. The growth is there. The margins have expanded. The targets haven't just been met, they have been crushed. The room goes cold. The talkers look down at their notes. Their excuses suddenly sound like what they are: pathetic noise. The operator didn't need a charismatic presentation. They didn't need to be liked. They brought a result. And a result is an unarguable force of nature. In that moment, the power shifted, not to the person with the best words, but to the person with the best work. Execution is the only language they respect. Every time you feel the urge to set the record straight with a critic, you are admitting that their words have power over you. You're trying to use speech to fix a problem that can only be fixed with performance. If someone thinks you're a failure, don't tell them you're not. Show them. If someone thinks your business is a hobby, don't argue with them. Out-earn them. A cold mind knows that a victory is the only true apology and the only true revenge. When you are rebuilding in silence, you are accumulating the ammunition of results. You are waiting for the moment when the evidence of your excellence is so overwhelming that your enemies have to pretend they were on your side all along. Execution is the only language they respect. Here is your behavioral instruction, the performance lockdown. For the next 30 days, you are to adopt a no-comment policy regarding your work. If someone doubts you, say nothing. If someone asks how it's going, say it's moving. If someone challenges your ability, smile and go back to the desk. Your goal is to build a wall of done. You are to focus entirely on the metrics. If you're a writer, your metric is words on the page. If you're an athlete, it's the numbers on the bar or the clock. If you're an entrepreneur, it's the revenue in the account. You are training yourself to disregard the social heat of the conversation and focus on the internal cold of the outcome. You are becoming a person who doesn't negotiate for status, but commands it through delivery. Execution is the only language they respect. You have a choice. You can have the warm feeling of being validated by a friend or the cold power of being undeniable to a market. That's the key. Validation is temporary. Results are permanent. When you rely on words, you're always one argument away from losing your standing. When you rely on results, you are a mountain. It's not about being humble. It's about your discipline to be factual. A result is a fact. An excuse is a fiction. Stop living in a world of stories and start living in a world of statistics. You don't need their permission to be the most productive person in the building. You don't need their permission to let your work be the only thing they know about you. Execution is the only language they respect. The world is full of talkers who are looking for listeners. Do not be a listener and do not be a talker. Be a doer. When you speak, speak in the past tense of finished. Anything else is just a wish. And the world doesn't pay for wishes. It pays for value. It pays for the finished. If you haven't finished the work, keep your mouth shut. If you have finished the work, let the work do the talking. You will find that the more you deliver, the less you have to say. You will find that silence is the ultimate accessory to success. It creates a vacuum of mystery that only your results are allowed to fill. Execution is the only language they respect. You don't need their permission to stop arguing. You don't need their permission to be unreachable until the project is done. Execution is the only language they respect. Repeat this until is your law. My output is my voice. My results are my reputation. My execution is my authority. You have stopped the debate. You have realized that winning the conversation is the consolation prize for losers. You are training yourself to be a person of action. You are becoming a ghost in the talk show of life, only appearing when the victory is already secure. Execution is the only language they respect. You mastered the argument. You have replaced your words with your work. You are moving with a level of undeniable gravity. But as the results begin to pile up, you will realize that a one-time result is not enough. To truly rebuild a life, the execution cannot be an event. It must be a lifestyle. You master the result. Now, let's talk about the engine that keeps the results coming when no one is watching. Chapter 6, the discipline of a secret grind. Most of you are addicted to the spotlight. You think that if a workout isn't posted, it didn't count. You think if your late-night study session isn't shared on a story, the knowledge didn't stick. You're living for the show. You're performing for an audience of strangers while your actual life remains in a state of decay. This is why you fail. You are looking for external heat to ignite an internal fire. It doesn't work that way. The moment the audience leaves, your fire goes out. The moment the likes stop coming, a discipline evaporates. True power is forged in the dark. It is built in the moments where there is zero chance of a good job. It is the work you do when you are tired, when you are alone, and when you know for a fact that no one will ever find out. This is the secret grind. It is the highest form of self-mastery because it is fueled entirely by your own standards. When you work in secret, you aren't building a brand. You are building a core of iron. It's not about the show, it's about the grind. You have a choice. You could be a performer who needs a crowd to stay motivated, or you could be an operator who needs nothing but a mission. That's the key. Performance is fragile. It depends on the environment. But the secret grind is anti-fragile. It depends only on your will. When you stop looking for a witness, you start looking for excellence. You move from the shimmer of the surface to the cold of the depths. It's not about your need for connection. It's about your discipline to be your own judge. You don't need their permission to be exceptional in private. You don't need their permission to outwork everyone while they think you're asleep. It's not about the show, it's about the grind. Think about the professional writer, not the one who tweets about writer's block and posts photos of their coffee. I'm talking about the real ones, the ones who produce. Imagine a writer who wakes up at 4 a.m. every single day for a year. The house is cold. The world is silent. They don't check their phone. They don't announce their progress. They just sit in the chair and produce 2,000 words. They do this for 365 days. No one knows they are writing a book. Their friends think they're just busy. Their family thinks they're just tired. But in that year of silence, they have produced over 700,000 words. They have built an empire of thought in the shadows. When they finally emerge and hand a finished manuscript to a publisher, the world calls them an overnight success. They call it inspiration. It wasn't inspiration. It was the secret grind. While the amateurs were talking about their creative process, the professional was executing in the dark. They didn't need a follower count to keep them in the chair. Their internal standard was the only audience they required. They owned the result because they owned the silence. It's not about the show, it's about the grind. Every time you share your discipline, you weaken it. You are releasing the internal pressure that should be driving you forward. You are taking a hit of social dopamine today instead of building a life of purpose tomorrow. When you keep your discipline secret, it becomes a part of your identity. It becomes who you are, not just something you do for attention. A cold mind understands that private habits create public results. If you want to be unshakable in the light, you must be obsessed with what you do in the dark. You must find a sick, private satisfaction in knowing that you are outworking the world while the world thinks you're doing nothing. Your secret discipline is your secret weapon. It is the invisible foundation of your visible success. It's not about the show, it's about the grind. Here is your behavioral instruction, the secret habit. For the next 30 days, I want you to adopt one high-level discipline that you tell absolutely no one about. If it's a physical habit, do it alone. If it's a financial habit, tell no one the numbers. If it's a mental habit, keep the insights to yourself. You are forbidden from mentioning it in conversation. You are forbidden from hinting at it on social media. If someone notices a change in you and asks what's going on, you're to give them a shrug and move on. You're training your brain to find dopamine in the execution, not the applause. You are sealing the leaks in your power. You're learning that the only person you ever need to impress is the one staring back at you in the mirror at 4 a.m. It's not about the show, it's about the grind. You have a choice. You can have the warm feeling of being relatable to the lazy, or the cold reality of being superior to the version of you that existed yesterday. That's the key. Relatability is a trap. It keeps you in the herd, but the secret grind pulls you out of it. It creates a gap between you and the world that can never be closed. It's not about being better than them. It's about your discipline to be better than your potential. You don't need their permission to have higher standards than your peers. You don't need their permission to be the only person you know who actually keeps the promises they make to themselves. It's not about the show, it's about the grind. The world is a circus. Everyone is shouting for attention. Everyone is performing a version of themselves that they think will be liked. Do not join the circus. Be the person who owns the tent. The owner doesn't need to perform. The owner just makes sure the machine runs. Your secret grind is the lubricant of that machine. It makes everything else look easy. When people see you perform in public, they will wonder how you stay so calm, how you move so fast, and how you know so much. They will think you have a gift. They will never see the thousands of hours of silent, secret repetition that made the gift possible. Let them wonder. Your silence is your superiority. It's not about the show, it's about the grind. You don't need their permission to be a ghost in the world of social signaling. You don't need their permission to let your work be a mystery until it is a masterpiece. It's not about the show, it's about the grind. Repeat this until it is your internal law. My habits are my own. My discipline is my secret. My grind is my glory. You have mastered the private win. You have realized that the most important conversations you will ever have are the ones you have with yourself when the lights are off. You are training yourself to be a person of internal integrity. You are becoming a master of the shadow. It's not about the show, it's about the grind. You master the secret. You have built a core of iron through the discipline of the dark. You're no longer performing. You are becoming. You are moving with a level of internal confidence that no one can take away because no one gave it to you. But as you grow stronger in your silence, the world will not just be curious, it will be hostile. The noise will try to find a way back in. You mastered the internal audience. Now, let's talk about how to protect your rebuilding from the people who want to watch it burn. Chapter 7. Starve the critics, feed the mission. Stop feeding the vultures. You're handing out maps to your vulnerabilities and wondering why you keep getting stabbed in the back. Every time you open your mouth to explain your process, every time you share a work in progress, and every time you vent about your struggles on the path, you're giving your critics the ammunition they need to destroy you. You're providing them with target practice. A critic cannot hit what they cannot see. An enemy cannot sabotage a plan they don't know exists. Most of you are too loud with your struggles. You want sympathy. You want someone to tell you that it's okay to be tired. But the world isn't sympathetic. The world is competitive. While you're looking for a shoulder to cry on, your critics are looking for a crack in your armor. They don't want to see you rebuild. They want to see you fail so they can feel better about their own miserable stagnation. Silence is a shield. You have a choice. You can be the open book that gets torn to shreds or the closed vault that is impenetrable. That's the key. Critics thrive on heat. They need the friction of your response. They need the data of your progress to find something to nitpick. When you deny them that data, you starve them. You leave them shouting at a wall. You leave them guessing. It's not about your right to express yourself. It's about your discipline to stay stealthy. You don't need their permission to be a mystery. You don't need their permission to protect your mission from the poisonous breath of the cynical. Silence is a shield. Think about the world of high-stakes technology. Look at the companies that actually change the world. They don't announce their disruptive breakthroughs when they are in the rough draft phase. They don't post daily updates of their failures and setbacks. They operate in what is called stealth mode. They lock the doors. They sign the non-disclosure agreements. They work in a total information blackout for years. Why? Because if the competitors knew what they were building, they would move to crush them before the product was strong enough to defend itself. They would lobby against them. They would steal the talent. They would manufacture a narrative of failure. By the time the company finally steps into the light, it's too late. The technology is finished. The patents are filed. The result is undeniable. The critics and competitors are left standing there, mouths open, staring at a mountain that wasn't there yesterday. They didn't have the heat to burn the house down because the house was built in the cold, dark silence of stealth. They fed the mission, and they starved the vultures. Silence is a shield. Every time you respond to a hater, you are losing. You are giving them your most precious resource, your attention. You are letting them dictate the tempo of your day. You are allowing their small-mindedness to pull you out of your high-level mission and into their low-level drama. You are choosing to be a reactor instead of an actor. A cold mind knows that the best response to a critic is no response at all. You don't argue with people who aren't on your level. You don't explain your surgery to the people who are just there to watch the blood. You stay in the lab. You stay in the gym. You stay in the books. You let them talk to the wind while you build the hurricane. Silence is a shield. Here is your behavioral instruction, the information embargo. For the next 30 days, you are to practice radical non-disclosure. If someone asks, "How is the project going?" you say it's fine. If someone mocks your new habits, you smile and say nothing. If someone tries to bait you into an argument about your goals, you walk away. You are cutting off the oxygen to the fire of criticism. You are training yourself to find power in what you don't say. When you refuse to defend yourself, you are demonstrating a level of internal certainty that terrifies people. Only the insecure need to explain. The master just executes. You are feeding the mission with the energy you used to waste on vultures. Silence is a shield. You have a choice. You can have the warm feeling of being right in an argument or the cold power of being undeniable in reality. That's the key. Arguments are for people who have nothing better to do. Rebuilding is for people who have a world to win. It's not about being antisocial. It's about your discipline to be strategic. You don't need their permission to be secretive. You don't need their permission to treat your goals like classified information. The more hidden your process is, the more lethal your result will be. Silence is a shield. Critics are parasites. They produce nothing. They only consume the effort of others. They are looking for a host to feed on. When you provide them with your plans and your work in progress, you are inviting the parasite to the table. You are letting them suck the life out of your enthusiasm before it has the chance to become a finished result. Stop being a host. Shut the door. Keep your plans in the dark where they can grow without being poisoned by the opinions of people who haven't built anything in their lives. The only people allowed to see the mission are the ones who are helping you build the walls. Everyone else gets the finished product and not a second sooner. Silence is a shield. You don't need their permission to value your focus over their feedback. You don't need their permission to be the person who just stopped sharing. Let them call you secretive. Let them call you paranoid. Let them call you whatever they want from the outside of your fortress. Silence is a shield. Repeat this until it is your internal law. I do not explain. I do not defend. I do not leak. My mission is fed by my silence. You have starved the vultures. You have realized that the critic is only as powerful as the information you give them. You are training yourself to be a stealth operator of your own life. You are becoming a ghost to your enemies and a giant in your work. Silence is a shield. You mastered the critics. You have protected the mission from the heat of the world. You are finally working in a clean, silent laboratory. But as you cut off the noise of others, you will find that the most dangerous critic is the one who lives inside your own head. You will realize that the applause you crave most is the one you have been denying yourself. You mastered the shield. Now, let's talk about the only opinion that actually determines your destiny. Chapter 8. The currency of internal respect. Stop looking for yourself in the eyes of other people. You are currently walking around with a deficit of the soul because you have spent your entire life trying to buy external approval with internal lies. You want the world to tell you that you are worthy, but you know, deep down in the cold, dark corners of your mind, that you are a fraud. You know that you break the promises you make to yourself the moment no one is looking. You know that your public excellence is a thin veneer covering a private disaster. Confidence is not a feeling. It is not an affirmation you scream at yourself in the mirror. Confidence is the reputation you have with yourself. It is the cumulative total of every promise kept when the world was asleep. When you rebuild in silence, you aren't just building a career or a body. You're building a bank account of internal respect. And that is the only wealth that can never be stolen. Self-respect is the ultimate currency. You have a choice. You could be famous to the world and a failure to yourself. Or you could be a ghost to the world and a god to yourself. That's the key. External respect is a fluctuating market. It goes up when you're winning and down when you're losing. It is out of your control. But internal respect is a fixed asset. It is the iron in your spine that remains after everyone else has stopped clapping. It's not about your self-esteem. It's about your discipline to honor your own word. You don't need their permission to be proud of yourself. You don't need their permission to know that you are a man or woman of your word. When you stop looking for the like button, you start looking for the integrity button. Self-respect is the ultimate currency. Think about the person in recovery, the true warrior who has looked into the abyss of addiction and decided to crawl out. They don't go on a publicity tour of their sobriety. They don't post a daily countdown on social media for the likes of strangers. They understand that their battle is too sacred for the noise of the internet. Every single night, they open a private journal. They write down a single number. Day 42, day 43, day 365. They don't get a trophy. They don't get a comment section full of fire emojis. What they get is something infinitely more powerful. They get to look themselves in the eye in the mirror every morning and know they didn't break. They know they kept the promise. Their confidence doesn't come from the applause of a crowd. It comes from the silence of the journal. They have built a private fortune of internal respect. When the world tries to tempt them or tell them they are weak, they simply look at that internal bank account and smile. They are unshakable because their value isn't tied to your opinion. It's tied to their secret discipline. Self-respect is the ultimate currency. Most of you are socially wealthy but internally bankrupt. You have a nice car, the polished profile, and a social circle. But you hate being alone in a quiet room. Why? Because when the noise stops, the person in the mirror starts talking. And that person knows you're a quitter. That person knows you skipped the workout. That person knows you spent the day scrolling instead of building. A cold mind knows that the secret grind we discussed isn't just about the work. It's about the worker. Every time you finish a task you didn't want to do without telling anyone, you are making a deposit into your soul. You are proving to your own nervous system that you are the master. You are training yourself to be a person who is driven by an internal compass rather than an external weather vane. Self-respect is the ultimate currency. Here is your behavioral instruction, the private contract. For the next 30 days, I want you to make 3 secret promises to yourself every morning. Maybe it's, I will not touch sugar. I will read 30 pages. I will make 10 sales calls. You are forbidden from sharing these promises with anyone. At the end of the day, you check the boxes in a private place. If you fail, you don't make an excuse to a friend. You sit with the shame of failing yourself. If you succeed, you don't post a victory lap. You sit with the cold satisfaction of being a person who does what they say. You are building the fortress of identity. You are realizing that the highest form of power is not being known by others, but being known by yourself as someone who cannot be bought, cannot be moved, and cannot be broken. Self-respect is the ultimate currency. You have a choice. You can have the warm validation of the crowd or the cold certainty of a mirror. That's the key. People who are obsessed with public opinion are easily manipulated. They are slaves to the heat of the moment. But the person who has a high balance of internal respect is a danger to the status quo. You cannot threaten a person who doesn't need your approval. You cannot distract a person who has already found their peace in the silence of the grind. It's not about being a loner. It's about your discipline to be your own primary source of value. You don't need their permission to feel like a winner. You don't need their permission to walk with your head high because you know what you did at 5 a.m. while they were dreaming. Self-respect is the ultimate currency. The world is a loud, fickle place. It will love you today and forget you tomorrow. If you build your house on the sand of social validation, it will fall. But if you build your house on the rock of internal respect, it will stand through every storm. Quiet rebuilding is the process of moving your self-worth department from the outside world into your own heart. It is the process of realizing that you are the only one who truly knows the depth of your effort. Stop trying to prove yourself to people who aren't even watching. Start proving yourself to the person who is with you every second of every day. Self-respect is the ultimate currency. You don't need their permission to value your private wins over their public opinions. You don't need their permission to be the only one who knows how far you've come. Self-respect is the ultimate currency. Repeat this until it is your internal law. I am the judge. I am the jury. I am the witness. My respect is earned in the dark. You have begun to fill the vault. You have realized that the only person you ever truly need to satisfy is the one staring back at you when the lights are out. You are training yourself to be self-validated. You are becoming a person of ironclad internal character. Self-respect is the ultimate currency. You master the mirror. You have built a fortune of internal respect. You are moving with a level of confidence that the world cannot touch because it didn't grant it. You have found your center. But as you build this new, rigid internal world, you must remain dangerous. You must remain unpredictable. You must realize that even your most successful plans are subject to change. You master the self. Now, let's talk about the power of being able to change your mind without changing your mission. Chapter 9, the power of the pivot. Stop marrying your first drafts. You are failing because you have handcuffed your future to an unrefined idea you had 6 months ago. You announced it to the world. You told your friends you were going to be a crypto expert or a real estate mogul or a fitness influencer. Now, you realize the market has shifted. You realize your heart isn't in it. You realize the path you chose is a dead end. But because you were so loud about it, you are terrified to change. You would rather fail publicly at the wrong thing than admit you were wrong and pivot to the right thing. This is the public commitment trap, and it is a death sentence for your potential. When you rebuild in silence, you retain the ultimate strategic weapon, the ability to change your mind. When no one knows what you are building, no one can laugh when you tear it down and start over. You are not a flip-flopper. You are an optimizer. You are a predator that shifts its weight when the wind changes. Flexibility is the reward of silence. You have a choice. You could be consistent and wrong or quiet and right. That's the key. Consistency is a virtue only when the path is correct. If you're headed toward a cliff, consistency is insanity. But most people are so addicted to the perception of reliability that they stay on the sinking ship. They are more afraid of a few people calling them indecisive than they are of wasting 5 years of their life. It's not about your lack of commitment. It's about your discipline to be objective. You don't need their permission to abandon a bad idea. You don't need their permission to change direction when the data tells you to move. Flexibility is the reward of silence. Think about the elite investor, not the one on the news shouting about a stock to pump his own portfolio. I'm talking about the silent shark. Imagine an investor who has billions in a traditional industry. They see a shift. They see a new technology. They see that their current industry is failing. They don't hold a press conference. They don't tweet about their new vision. They quietly, surgically begin to liquidate. They exit the old and enter the new in total silence. By the time the press realizes they've moved, the transition is already complete. They didn't have to justify the flip-flop. They didn't have to defend their change of heart to people who don't understand the market. While the public is still arguing about the old way, the silent investor is already profiting from the new. They weren't tied to a public statement. They were tied to the result. They were free to pivot because they were smart enough to stay quiet. Flexibility is the reward of silence. Every time you make a public declaration, you are building a prison for your future self. You are creating a consistency bias that will prevent you from seeing the truth when it slaps you in the face. You will ignore red flags because you don't want to look bad to people you don't even like. Rebuilding in silence is the only way to remain intellectually honest. It is the only way to ensure that you are following the mission, not the ego. A cold mind knows that the first version of any plan is usually wrong. The second version is better. The third version is dangerous. By the time the world sees what you've built, you should be on version 10. But if you had shared version 1, you would have been too embarrassed to change. You would have been stuck defending a mediocre draft instead of perfecting a masterpiece. Flexibility is the reward of silence. Here is your behavioral instruction, the pivot drill. I want you to look at your current secret mission. Ask yourself, if I found out today that this path was guaranteed to fail, how fast could I change direction? If the answer is immediately, you're winning. If the answer is, I'd have to explain myself to X, Y, and Z, you are still a slave. For the next 30 days, you are to practice internal fluidity. If a better way to do your work presents itself, take it. If you realize your current routine is ineffective, scrap it. You are training yourself to be loyal to the objective, not the plan. You are stripping away the social friction that prevents most people from adapting. You're becoming a ghost that can walk through walls. Flexibility is the reward of silence. You have a choice. You can have the warm feeling of being steady in the eyes of the mediocre, or the cold power of being lethal in the eyes of the market. That's the key. The world moves fast. If you're slow to pivot because you're worried about your image, you'll be left behind. The person who rebuilds in silence is always the first to adapt. They are always the first to capitalize on a new reality. It's not about being indecisive. It's about your discipline to follow the truth. You don't need their permission to be wrong in private. You don't need their permission to tear down the building and start the foundation again at midnight. The only person who needs to know why you changed is you. Flexibility is the reward of silence. Most people's lives are monuments to yesterday's decisions. They stay in the same dead-end job, the same toxic relationship, and the same failing habits because they have committed to them publicly. They are living in a tomb they built with their own words. Don't be a monument, be a movement. A movement can change course. A monument just sits there until it erodes. When you stop talking about what you're doing, you gain the freedom to be anyone you want to be tomorrow. You gain the power to discard the version 1.0 of yourself without a funeral. You're no longer a brand that has to stay consistent for its followers. You are a force that stays consistent for its purpose. Flexibility is the reward of silence. You don't need their permission to be unpredictable. You don't need their permission to wake up tomorrow and decide that the old mission is over. Let them call you a mystery. Let them wonder how you always seem to be 3 steps ahead. Their confusion is the sound of your freedom. Flexibility is the reward of silence. Repeat this until it is your internal law. I am loyal to the target, not the tool. I am free to change. I am a master of the pivot. You have mastered the strategic retreat. You have realized that the ability to change direction is just as important as the ability to move forward. You are training yourself to be an agile operator of your own destiny. You are becoming unshakable because you are no longer brittle. Flexibility is the reward of silence. You mastered the pivot. You have reclaimed your freedom to optimize. You are moving with a level of fluidity that makes you impossible to pin down. You have the secret, the shield, and the respect. But now, as you approach the end of your quiet rebuilding, you will realize that all these chapters were leading to a single, inevitable moment. You mastered the transition. Now, let's talk about the day the silence ends and the world has to deal with what you become. Chapter 10. The Unveiling of the Master. The shadow cannot hold you forever. There comes a moment when the foundation is dry, the walls are reinforced, and the interior is polished. You have spent months, perhaps years, in the fortress of anonymity. You have starved the critics and fed the mission. You have moved in silence, pivoting when necessary, and building a bank account of internal respect that no one can liquidate. Now, the construction is over. It is time to step out, not to ask for approval, and certainly not to explain where you've been. You step out to occupy the space you have built. You emerge not as a seeker of validation, but as a master of your reality. The world is not prepared for you. They remember the old version. They remember the talker, the drifter, the person who is easily moved by the heat of social opinion. But that person is dead. You killed them in the dark. When you unveil the results of your quiet rebuilding, you aren't making an announcement. You are presenting an undeniable fact. You are a mountain that appeared overnight while the world was sleeping. Be the mountain. The noise does not matter. You have a choice. You could be the person who tries to reintroduce themselves to their old circle, or you could be the person whose presence alone changes the temperature of the room. That's the key. Mastery doesn't need to shout. Mastery doesn't need a marketing campaign. When a master enters a room, the noise of the amateurs naturally fades. People stop talking not because you ask them to, but because your results have stripped them of their context. It's not about your newfound confidence. It's about your discipline to let your output do the talking. You don't need their permission to be a giant. You don't need their permission to be the most competent person in the building. You have earned your seat in the silence. Be the mountain. The noise does not matter. Think about the overnight success. The media loves this story. They see a founder launch a world-changing product. They see an artist release a masterpiece that dominates the charts. They see an athlete come out of nowhere to break a record. To the public, it looks like magic. It looks like luck. It looks like they just emerged. But look closer at the history of the master. What you see as an overnight event was actually 10 years of quiet, obsessive, invisible labor. It was a decade of 4 a.m. starts in a cold room. It was thousands of failures that no one ever saw. It was a deliberate choice to stay in the dark until the work was so good it became a weapon. They didn't unveil a concept. They unveiled a finished world. By the time the world saw them, the battle was already over. The master didn't step into the light to compete. They stepped into the light to collect their winnings. They stood like a mountain while the noise of the sudden fame swirled around them. They were unshakable because they had already been tested in the shadow. Be the mountain. The noise does not matter. When you finally unveil your new life, people will try to pull you back into the old conversation. They will try to bring up the ghost of who you were. They will try to treat you with the same casual disrespect they used when you were a drifter. Let them. Do not correct them with words. Correct them with your standard. If you have rebuilt yourself, you no longer react to their bait. You don't get defensive. You don't explain. You simply continue to execute at a level they cannot comprehend. Eventually, The weight of your results will crush their old perception. They will realize that the person they thought they knew has been replaced by something harder and more permanent. They're looking at a mountain, and wind doesn't move mountains. Be the mountain. The noise does not matter. Here is your final behavioral instruction, the sovereign entrance. As you begin to share your results, whether that is your new business, your new body, or your new expertise, you are to adopt the rule of 3. First, limit your words. If you have a finished product, show it. If you have a new skill, use it. Do not talk about the struggle or the process. Second, hold the gaze. When people look for the old you in your eyes, they should find only the cold of the master. Do not look away first. Third, return to the dark. After you have delivered your result, do not linger for the applause. Do not stay to answer every trivial question. Go back to your sanctuary. Go back to the next mission. You are training the world to see you as a source of results, not a source of entertainment. You are maintaining the mystery that makes mastery so powerful. You are proving that you don't need the light to survive. You only use the light to show the world what you built in the dark. Be the mountain. The noise does not matter. You have a choice. You can be the success that everyone understands or the power that everyone fears. That's the key. Most people want to be understood. They want their journey to be relatable. But the master knows that relatability is the graveyard of greatness. If they understand you, they can manage you. If they can manage you, they can distract you. It's not about being arrogant. It's about your discipline to be undeniable. You don't need their permission to be the exception to the rule. You don't need their permission to be the one who got away from the herd. The noise of their confusion, their jealousy, and their awe is just wind hitting the side of the peak. It doesn't change the elevation. Be the mountain. The noise does not matter. Quiet rebuilding is not a phase. It is a permanent operating system. Even when you are successful, even when you are famous, you must keep a part of yourself in the shadow. You must always have a secret grind happening. You must always have a fortress of anonymity where the next version of you is being forged. A master is never a finished product. They are a constant, quiet evolution. The world sees the unveiling, but they never see the work. That is the secret of the 1%. They are always rebuilding, always refining, and always moving in silence. They're the mountains that anchor the world. Be the mountain. The noise does not matter. You don't need their permission to be the strongest person in the room. You don't need their permission to let your presence be the only explanation they get. Be the mountain. The noise does not matter. Repeat this until it is your eternal identity. I am the result. I am a silence. I am the mountain. You have completed the rebuilding. You have walked through the dark and emerged with a life of iron. You have realized that the only witness that matters is the one in the mirror, and the only argument that works is the one that uses facts instead of words. You're no longer a seeker. You are a master. Be the mountain. The noise does not matter. You mastered the unveiling. You have emerged from the shadow as a force of nature. You have built a life that is so solid the world's noise simply bounces off. You have won the war of quiet rebuilding. You mastered the silence. Now, it is time to deliver the final word to the world you have conquered. Conclusion. The silence is your power. From this moment on, you are a ghost to the talkers and a giant to the doers. You have the blueprint for quiet rebuilding. You know the cost of the witness, the poison of the praise, and the shield of the shadow. You have internal respect that no one can touch. But do not get comfortable. The world is loud, and it is always looking for a way back in. It will try to make you loud again. It will try to make you relatable. It will try to pull you off the mountain and back into the mud of the drift. Don't let it. Every time you feel the urge to speak, build instead. Every time you feel the urge to prove, execute instead. Every time you feel the need for a witness, look in the mirror instead. The master is not the one who wins once. The master is the one who never stops rebuilding in the dark. Put this phone down. Close the tabs. Walk into the world and don't say a word. Let them wonder. Let them watch. Let them wait. The work is never finished. The mountain is never moved. Go back into the silence and be great. Get to work.